Hi, we're the Snowballkickers, and over the last few years we've been making a series of films that challenged ourselves and the audiences watching them. We thought we'd revisit them by getting back some of the actors and creatives involved for a chat. Keep watching after the film for this fun and fascinating discussion. This is Glass. Okay, so you've just watched Glass. I guess the first question everyone's going to be asking is, Geoff, what possessed you to write a script without any dialogue?
Okay, well, I'd like to say it was my idea, but actually it was one of those sort of writing challenges you're given every now and then, to write a ghost story with one interior, one performer, and Glass came out of that. So the original that I wrote is just the stuff that happens in the room and in the garden. So when you see Em put the shoes on and then you go into the garden and Emily, you see her feet in the shoes. That's the bit I wrote with that central section and going through the mirror and all that. And Darren added on the beginning and the end where Em is going through the field, through the graveyard to the house, and then back at the Emily is then coming back the other way, which extended it. Also gave it a context which the original script didn't have. That central bit of the script was written shot by shot. So going from the shoes to the shoes outside, and then the dress, and then the cloak, and then she's. Although actually this might come up in the conversation later. We originally, and you filmed, Libby lying on a slab dead rather than lying in the garden. And I thought one of the conversations would be quite interesting to have is that you did all that. And
yeah, that's 2 hours of our life we'd never get back. I don't know what happened to that, Darren. I just don't think we could get the shots, could we?
I remember when we played it back, it just seemed a bit too contrived. It seemed a bit too like we were forcing what was really happening too obviously to the audience. And I think then we all scratched our heads thinking, how can we sell the idea of the through the mirror of the world? And because we had this very evocative orchard, I think between me, you and Libby, we kind of came up with this really obscure concept that on paper you just wouldn't write. And I think when we just shot it, we weren't sure whether it would work. Again, I think that's a case of sometimes you write a film 3 times, you write it on paper, then you write it again when you're shooting it, and then you write it again when you're editing and trying to fix it. And I think that was a case here where we did all 3 things and ended up with something much bigger than what we started with.
Yeah, I remember Matt had got his new slow motion toy on his camera and wanted to play with it a lot, and so I think we ended up with quite a few shots just because you were looking forward to playing with slow motion.
Slow motion toys.
Libby, how many times did you have to catch that apple?
We did it a few times, but because the light went wrong, or the camera wasn't quite where you wanted it, and wasn't getting it in the right way. But it was an odd day that was. But it was so much fun.
Remember, you having to look dead straight ahead, and we dropped the apple roughly where you knew you were going to be there, and you just had to catch it without looking or reacting.
Looking at it, yeah.
But again, things like the slow motion just spinning round and round. I remember it was an incredibly hot day, and I don't know
uneven ground.
Yeah, uneven ground. I just don't know how you kept spinning and spinning. And of course, we were spinning the camera in the opposite direction. I think it was one of those where, in my head, I just knew that if we slowed it down and added Matteo's music to it, we would end up with something that worked. But it was one of those, let's just take a punt sort of thing.
I love the way the music works with it. The beat of the trees going round and the beat of the circle is the same as the beat of the music. Obviously, Matteo, you would have planned it that way. But just the music goes into slow motion at that point.
Yeah.
It shivers.
This thing of a tree is absolutely unintended. I mean, I will look again at the movie and see it, because I didn't intend it. But yes, think this is the moment where she's in my head. She's dancing a waltz. I had as a reference, as a not really a literal reference, but as a mental reference, the waltz that is happening in Tchaikovsky's Last Symphony, because it's a waltz that is still dance music, but it looks like the dance of ghosts in a ruined city, no? So that was my idea of waltz, something that was really cold and ghostly.
And I think it was a magical piece of music, to be honest with you, because one of the things with filmmaking and in any form of video production, music is probably one of the hardest things about it.
I think this film came really late. I think Matt and I were very, very anxious about this film right until the point where the music came in, because we edited it 10, 12, 14 times and it just never seemed to work. Then we did the reshoots in the orchard and we felt as though it could work, but it still wasn't working. And then we just gave a locked off edit to you. And I think, Matteo, maybe it's because we've been working together for about 2 years on Hanging In There, and we just kind of instinctively knew what each other kind of wanted and how each other kind of approached this.
Yes.
You know, obviously, my composer background meant we kind of shortcut through an awful lot of the issues that director composers have, I think.
Absolutely.
We were able to just talk a common language and instantly get to what we were trying to do. But
Absolutely.
Even so, when you came back with that first cut, which we really didn't change at all much, how you see it now was how you scored it right from the start. In the mirror, maybe we did a little bit, but it was virtually there. And after when it came back, it was in a way that I hadn't conceived. So it came back even better. I sort of bounced back even better, you know. So.
Well, that's the magical thing about having more people involved. You get new way of looking the same thing, completely different after. And that's
I've actually thought, having worked quite a lot with a choreographer over the last few years, I would love to see Glass, the dance piece, with your score underneath it.
Oh.
It would make a really nice ballet piece, or contemporary dance piece.
There's a nice little challenge for you, Livy.
Yeah.
But if you had two dancers, one playing each, you could actually have them doing the whole mirror thing as well. It would be really interesting. Oh, so Libby, I was going to say, having been in Hanging In There, where you had lots and lots of lines, which told you, I'm saying this because, so you could work on motivation and stuff. How do you play, a modern woman with no dialogue, and a ghost who looks exactly like her, also with no dialogue? How do you get into those parts?
Well, in my mind, it was the same woman, but trapped in a different world. And I know that's maybe not the story you were telling, but she was the same character to me, but from two different times. And she's very curious and very, she was clearly exploring, and she was going out to, explore lands that she'd not been in before. And that's exactly what she got, really, is she ended up going a lot further than she imagined and sort of back in time and releasing a past version of herself into the modern world. And so then I suppose the way to get the differentiation was very much the physicality of the character. So the modern girl was very loose, whereas the lady that came back at the end was very much more rigid and held herself more upright, and that's how I sort of tried to physically get that across without any words or dialogue or accents or anything to make the differentiation between the two. It was really great fun, actually, because it gave me a lot more freedom than I normally have. It was almost better because I could imagine her the way I wanted to. I wasn't restricted by dialogue that sort of tied me to a time and a place, or a favorite color, or whether or not I've got a pet. It was all in my own mind. So yeah, it was really good fun to play.
Again, I think one of the only bits of sound that isn't either a sound effect made by an object in the film or the music is the cuckoo as you come out of the house at the end. I love that.
Well, the idea I had there was that cuckoos notoriously replace the birds from the nest, and when you came out, the normal sound, the actual soundtrack we recorded was very, very quiet, and I just felt as it just needed a sound because there was no music at that point, just something to say to the audience, something's happened, there's a switch here. And I sat there, and the first thing that came to my head is, well, a cuckoo replaces. So that's why I went and put a cuckoo sound effect in there. So Matteo, do you want to talk how you approach, say, the music? It's a character in itself. While you're here, it'd be lovely to hear your thoughts, how you approach the film.
I was looking initially for some references. There is that idea of the words that I already said. Also, I was looking for something that in some way could remind me of the sound of some Danny Elfman. And I was looking actually for something that could possibly sound weird to you. That is, I wanted something that to me sounded British. That doesn't actually mean it does, because I'm a Mediterranean person, so I have a weird perception possibly of what to me sounds British. But that was my first intention. And well, there are some little tricks, if you want, that are typical composer's tricks. Like in the beginning, there is a major chord followed by the same chord but in minor key. That is a way of symbolizing the two characters. They are the same chord, but well, it's quite obvious, I guess, to Darren. But these are like stereotypized tricks that we tend to use. Well, it's also about a slow progression, because she starts wandering in the outside, and it's a quite tranquil and safe environment at first. Then there is the first appearing of it's a cemetery, no? If I'm not wrong. So the music starts a little bit to give some anxiety. I think that when she's dancing, we understand that she died of an illness, no? Inside the mirror, there is a kind of sadness that I hope I could put in the music and give it to the character. It was very, very natural. So I simply kept writing what to me was already on the images.
So do you start a score like that? Because for me, the piece that always stands out, that seems to sort of go forward and back from there, is the dance in the orchard. Did you start with that? Did you start at the beginning of the film?
No, absolutely. I wrote it in a linear way. I started from the beginning and ended with the end.
And I think there was only about 2 minor pauses in the music all the way through. So that's quite unusual in a short film, that you almost go end to end with music.
Yeah.
Obviously, your background in orchestral writing obviously helps that, because you're used to writing much longer pieces of continuous pieces of music anyway. So I think this was quite a very good fit between your skills as a composer and arranger and what we required. I think a lot of composers would have struggled to maintain the story journey and the peaks and troughs in that. because they're just not used to the stamina of writing and continuing themes through over 10 minutes.
Yeah, of course.
You were able to do it quite effortlessly. And now there'll be a ballet, so you know it's it's going to take, with Libby doing all the dancing and so on. So it's going to have a new life at some point by the sound of it. That's your
I
job.
promise you do not want me dancing in that ballet. Doing the work with the glass actually was really quite interesting, because I've never done anything like that before. And just hearing about the way that you guys were going to kind of sew it together again in edit and stuff like that, I was just like, oh, that's really clever. It's really, so that was like a bit of a learning curve for me to hear about how all that was going to work. So that was good.
It was for us as well, Libby, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess from hanging in there where we'd done a lot of split screen, we were familiar how we would do it. But like you say, it wasn't until we got in the edit where we realised it had
How
worked.
hard it was.
Yeah, we did make it work eventually.
Mm.
I have to say that particular shot is probably my most favourite part of the film. I think, you know, if each of our films have a sort of a twist about them, and I'd say the twist in this film is that we made a ghost story on the hottest day of the year in the most glorious sunshine, the very opposite of what you would expect a supernatural film to be made in. And I remember when we were up in the attic and the sun was literally blasting through at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right through the windows, right opposite where you were standing for the mirror. And there was kind of dust in the air, and there was that much dust and that much light that they looked like little sprites. They looked quite natural, magical. It's almost as if we'd put a special effect on, but it was all very natural. And with the color and everything, to me, it just looked like a Vermeer painting. And it's just one of those moments where you just think everything was just so perfect. I think it's gorgeous looking. I mean, it was nominated for an award for its cinematography, and I think the way it looks is just stunningly, completely not what you'd expect this film to look like. And that was partly perhaps the happy accidents that seemed to follow us. But we seem to make good use of it, you know? Rather than going, oh, we can't shoot because it's too bright. We're like, let's just shoot because it is bright and let's see what we can do with it. But that particular light did cause us an awful lot of problems with that mirror, because we knew we'd have to cut it in the middle, and, you know, it's...
and of course, because we were using 2 different cameras, weren't we, as well? Yeah. So that didn't help.
No, not at all. That took a long time to grade and to finish.
Yeah.
Interestingly, or maybe not interestingly, I didn't know this when I wrote it, but I found out afterwards, in Victorian times, when you've got a corpse laid out, they would always put cloths over the mirrors so the mirrors couldn't take your soul. Yeah. It wouldn't have changed the script if I'd known that before. It just seemed pretty weird that actually was a thing about mirrors and bodies in Victorian times.
As far as the cloth goes, we actually did try and look at this. When we said we did that corpse scene, which we then took out, we actually deliberately had the mirror placed in the shot without a cloth on it, which would explain how Emily gets trapped behind the mirror. Like her soul is reflected into the mirror and then becomes trapped because the mirror wasn't covered over. And even though we shot it, we didn't feel as though it could in any way, if you didn't know that, there was no way that what we shot would have told you that. It would have needed somebody else to come in and say, oh, you're going to put the cloth over the mirror. No, it's fine, blah, blah. Because we didn't have extra characters and we didn't have dialogue. And we shot this really slow motion going along the corpse, and you could see the reflection in the mirror, and there was candles and everything, and it looked beautiful, but I just felt as though it didn't actually tell us anything. It looked nice, but it didn't go far enough in explaining that the reason why she's getting trapped is because we didn't cover the mirror over.
Yeah, because when I think back to that bit, Darren, as well, because I think there was even conversations where we talked about the possibility of adding narration to it, wasn't there?
Mm-hmm. Which we try and get over that. I was obviously, we struggled really heavily with this edit to try and coherently get a story across. You know, it wasn't anything Libby had done or hadn't done. In fact, we even went and reshot some stuff the experimental stuff in the orchard was reshot, and we could see how it could work, but we were just sitting there going, is anybody going to get this? Are they going to understand what's going on? And then obviously we handed over to Matteo, and it came back, and the storytelling in the music, I feel kind of cemented it all together. But it really wasn't an easy time. We just didn't know. We did cut an awful lot out that we thought on paper would explain what was going on, but actually in truth, when you filmed it, didn't. It probably would have confused it and dragged the story down a little bit. We decided in a sense to go quite economical and straight for it. So
I like the fact that it tells this a story that is completely coherent. Woman gets dragged into mirror, gets stuck, other woman steps out of mirror, but we don't tell anybody how to feel about it. There might be some people thinking, she deserved it, she shouldn't have broken into that house. There'll be some people thinking, oh, poor woman, trapped in that mirror. They might think, the other woman's free. She was taken away from life early, and now she's out and free in 2017. It might be a bit confusing. But we don't, none of us have put any interpretation on it, so that the audience, no doubt, 5 people could watch it and all have a different take on what it means. And I quite like that it's really open.
And just talking about that, one of the few moments there is music is the bit where Emily's walked through the mirror and Em's left there.
Yeah.
And we deliberately didn't have the music there because we felt that what Libby had done with her literally banging silently on the inside of the mirror was quite chilling. Yeah. And by putting music there, you would almost be telling the audience how to feel, whether sympathetically or not.
Yeah.
You cue them to an emotion, whereas we felt by having no music there and just letting Libby's pain look lost, like what's going to happen now? Well, how am I going to get out of this? There's a whole range of emotions in that one shot, and it just kind of, by leaving it silent, it's more chilling, isn't it? You agree, Matteo?
Yeah, also silence is a super powerful way of scoring films. If it's deliberate and especially if you have music nearly from beginning to end. Leaving a spot without music is super
loud. It becomes loud. The silence becomes louder because you haven't used it. And I remember, because of the angles, you actually had to be completely in an awkward angle to sort of try and get the reflection in the right place. You weren't actually looking directly at the camera and directly at the mirror. We had to angle it all.
Yeah, I was actually banging on nothing, wasn't I? Fresh air.
I was banging on nothing from about 6 meters away, weren't you?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Because if it was directly on, you would have seen the camera. So we had the camera at a 45-degree angle, which meant that you had to be at the other 45-degree angle, and you had to be at the same position as the camera was. It was quite a complex shoot trying to work all these angles out. And
I like the fact that apart from the split screen when she goes through the mirror sideways, all the effects are analog. That effect of being trapped in the mirror was done as in a Victorian theatre. You'd have to do a Pepper's Ghost or something. And in a way that I rather like that there's not a lot of technology getting in the way. It's nearly all told with acting and sleight of hand sort of thing. So it has that kind of Victorian touch to it. So I thought that was good. There would have been no way to do the split screen analog, but everything else, the fact that it was created in the space with real things, I thought that's really nice.
Yeah, I guess we could have used a trapdoor or something. That might have been funny, but that's a different kind of film, isn't it? That's a farce, I suppose.
Yeah.
So thank you to Libby and to Matteo for joining us on this discussion. It's been a real fascinating conversation and just lovely to catch up and revisit what I think is quite a magical film. And hopefully you enjoyed watching it. Hopefully you've enjoyed this discussion. And if you want to leave comments, leave them below. And just want to say, stay safe, everyone. And thank you for watching. And goodbye. Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye. Bye-bye.